In the dust-choked towns of the American frontier, some men didn't just carry guns. They carried reputations sharp enough to kill before a shot was ever fired. These are the legends who walked into saloons as whispers and left as warnings. And by the end of this video, I promise you'll never look at the Old West the same way again. Wild Bill Hickok. Before the legends, before the dime novel fantasies, there was Wild Bill Hickok, a man whose presence alone could freeze a saloon into silence. He wasn't just fast, he was deliberate, calm, a gunslinger who didn't draw unless he meant to end something. His icy blue eyes were said to size up danger before it even understood it was in trouble. Abilene, Hays City, the frontier trails. Everywhere he went, trouble found him, and every time, Hickok answered with steady, surgical violence. Yet what made him terrifying wasn't the speed of his draw, it was the certainty. Hickok never fired warning shots. He fired conclusions. Even his enemies respected him, knowing that if Wild Bill stood across from you, the story was already written. And as we turn the page, someone even deadlier steps out of the shadows next. Billy the Kid. Billy the Kid wasn't born a menace. He grew into one. Quick with a grin, quicker with a gun, he moved through New Mexico like a spark, looking for dry brush. No one danced with danger the way he did. Light on his feet, sharp in his instincts, he slipped out of jail cells, ambushes, and manhunts as if luck itself had taken his side. But there was calculation behind the legend. Billy knew the land, knew the people, knew exactly when to charm and when to strike. He didn't shoot to intimidate. He shot because survival in his world demanded it. Every bullet was a decision. Every escape a reminder that the kid played by rules no lawman could predict. But if Billy was the wildfire, the next name is the storm rolling in behind him, darker and far less forgiving. John Wesley Hardin. John Wesley Hardin wasn't just dangerous. He was a storm wrapped in skin, a man whose temper flared quicker than a match in dry brush. Born in Texas and hardened by chaos, Hardin claimed he killed his first man at 15, and the violence only escalated. He rode through the Old West with a revolver on each hip and a reputation that made even seasoned gunslingers step aside. Hardin wasn't reckless. He was calculated, cold, and frighteningly fast, firing with a precision that felt almost unnatural. Lawmen hunted him, newspapers feared him, and towns whispered his name long after he rode out of sight. But prison years changed him, or so he claimed. When he finally walked free, the world expected a reformed man. Instead, something far stranger emerged. And what happened next shocked even those who thought they knew the legend. Doc Holliday. Doc Holliday walked into the Old West not as a gunslinger, but as a sick, sharp-tongued gambler with a death sentence in his lungs, and somehow became one of the most feared pistol hands alive. A dentist by trade and a killer by necessity, Holliday moved like a man who had nothing left to lose. His tuberculosis carved away his time, but it also carved away his fear, leaving behind a cold steadiness that made him terrifying in a duel. At the card table, he read men like open books. In the street, he ended them with the same precision. With Wyatt Earp at his side, Holliday carved his legend at the OK Corral and far beyond, surviving battles that should have killed him long before disease ever could. And yet, one final encounter still waits in the shadows, one even Doc never saw coming. Clay Allison. Clay Allison didn't just walk the frontier. He stormed through it like a lightning strike wrapped in human skin. Known for his wild temper and unpredictable violence, Allison carried a reputation that traveled faster than any bullet he ever fired. He wasn't a hired killer or a lawman gone sour. He was a force of nature, a man who acted on impulse and lived by the raw edge of instinct. One moment he was charming and polite, the next he was flipping tables, drawing steel, and settling grudges with terrifying efficiency. Allison's enemies feared his accuracy, But his friends feared his fury, because once it ignited, even he couldn't control it. Towns whispered his name long after he rode away, leaving dust and silence in his wake. But somewhere along his violent trail lies a secret confrontation, one history never fully recorded. Dallas Staudenmeier. Dallas Staudenmeier arrived in the Old West like a tall, quiet storm, calm on the surface, deadly underneath. A former soldier turned marshal, he brought law to chaotic streets with a pair of revolvers and the reflexes of a man who'd survived too many battlefields to hesitate. Now, Staudenmeier didn't posture or shout. He let his accuracy speak for him. In the infamous 4 dead in 5 seconds gunfight, he proved why outlaws whispered his name with a mix of awe and dread. One smooth motion, one flash of steel, and the dust settled with his enemies on the ground. But with every victory came new rivals. Men waiting, watching, plotting their own shot at the marshal who never missed. And somewhere, in that growing circle of enemies, a hidden hand was preparing a move that would change everything. Ben Thompson walked the frontier with the confidence of a man who'd stood in every kind of trouble and lived to retell it. A former soldier, gambler, and hired gun, he carried himself with a cool, almost unsettling calm. The kind born from knowing exactly how fast you can draw and how rarely you miss. Thompson wasn't reckless. He was calculated, sharp, and dangerously sure of his own skill. In saloons from Austin to Dodge City, he settled disputes with the precision of a surgeon and the cold finality of a man who believed in finishing what others started. His charm won him friends. His bullets won him enemies. And his reputation turned both into shadows, following him from town to town. But as his fame grew, so did the man waiting in silence, someone preparing a challenge Thompson never expected. Jim Killer Miller. Jim Killer Miller didn't need rage or theatrics to terrify the Old West. He terrified it by being calm, ice cold, calculated. A man who killed not in drunken brawls or sudden fits of anger, but in silence, for money, and with unnerving precision. Always dressed in black, always polite, Miller carried the demeanor of a churchgoer and the skill of a professional executioner. He preferred ambushes from long range, his shotgun roaring before his target even realized death had arrived. He claimed to have never killed a man who didn't need killing. But the bodies stacked behind him told a darker truth. One whispered in every territory he crossed, Miller didn't fear the law. He believed he was above it. Yet even he couldn't see the final set of eyes tracking him. A hunter, bold enough to hunt the hunter. Tom Horn. They said if Tom Horn was on your trail, you'd never hear him coming. Only the soft crunch of snow or sagebrush after you'd already been marked. Horn wasn't born into violence. He studied it, honed it, perfected it like a craft. A scout, interpreter, and tracker, he moved through the frontier with the certainty of a man who understood the land better than the people living on it. His rifle spoke seldom, but every shot carried absolute intent. Working as a hired gun for cattle barons, Horn turned range wars into quiet, efficient executions. No saloon theatrics, no shouted threats, just the long shadow of a man who believed skill was its own justification. But even a master tracker can miss the trail that leads to his own downfall. And one misstep was already waiting, patient and deadly. Wyatt Earp. Wyatt Earp didn't rise from chaos. He walked straight into it with the calm certainty of a man who refused to blink first. Unlike the hot-blooded gunmen of his era, Earp carried a steady, deliberate presence that made men rethink their decisions before drawing steel. He wasn't the fastest hand, nor the loudest voice, but he was unshakable. A lawman carved from grit, duty, and an iron sense of right that didn't bend for outlaws or politics. From Wichita to Tombstone, Earp faced killers who thrived on fear, yet not once did his eyes waver. The OK Corral didn't make him a legend. It confirmed what those who knew him already understood. Wyatt Earp stood where other men stepped back. Still, even legends cast long shadows. And somewhere within his, A new threat was beginning to take shape. Luke Short didn't need thunder or theatrics. His danger lived in quiet moments, in the slight tilt of his hat or the way his eyes sharpened before trouble began. Small in stature but enormous in reputation, Short carried himself like a man who had measured the world and found no reason to fear it. A gambler first and a gunman second, he handled cards and colts with the same effortless precision, winning fortunes one night and defending his honor the next. In Dodge City and Fort Worth, he settled disputes with a calm confidence that unnerved even seasoned killers. Men learned quickly. If Luke Short reached for his gun, the fight was already over. Yet, somewhere on the edge of his victories, an unexpected enemy was preparing a challenge, one that would test whether Short's luck could outlast his skill. Bat Masterson. Before the frontier etched his name into legend, you need to know who Bat Masterson truly was. Not just a gunfighter, but a man who reinvented himself every time the West tried to pin him down. Buffalo hunter, sheriff, gambler, saloon keeper. Masterson lived a dozen lives, each one sharper and bolder than the last. What set him apart wasn't reckless violence, but a cool, strategic mind. He fought only when he had to, and when he did, he fought with decisive, deadly accuracy. As sheriff of Ford County, he cleaned out outlaws with a calm authority that unsettled even the toughest cowboys. He spoke softly, listened closely, and drew iron only when the line had truly been crossed. But history has a way of circling back, and a shadow from Bat's past was preparing to emerge with unfinished business in hand. Johnny Ringo. If the Old West had ghosts that walked in daylight, Johnny Ringo was one of them. A man whose quiet presence carried more menace than a dozen shouting outlaws. He wasn't wild, he wasn't chaotic. He was controlled, brooding, and frighteningly intelligent. Ringo spoke softly, moved lightly, and killed with a precision that felt almost surgical. Those who met him swore his eyes held a kind of cold loneliness, the kind that comes from believing the world is already lost. Rumors followed him like dust, that he could outdraw most men alive, that he drank to silence something dark inside, that he lived by an honor code only he understood. Even seasoned gunmen felt uneasy in his shadow. Doc Holliday himself called him one of the West's deadliest. Yet along the twisting path of Ringo's life, a final unanswered mystery waits, one that still haunts historians today. Bill Longley. Bill Longley didn't storm into the history of the Old West. He slipped into it like a blade in the dark. Lean, quick, and unpredictable, Longley was a gunman shaped by hard roads and harder choices. He carried a charm that fooled strangers, a smile that came too easily, and a trigger finger that moved even easier. Some called him a natural-born killer. Others said he was a product of violence he could never outrun. Either way, bodies fell wherever his temper met opportunity. Longley never stuck to one town long enough for the dust to settle. He drifted, fought, boasted, and vanished, leaving behind stories so wild that even historians struggle to separate truth from legend. But hidden inside those tales is a final truth, a moment where Longley realized someone just as fast, just as dangerous, had begun tracking him: Kingfisher. To understand Kingfisher, you must first picture a man who rewrote the rules of outlaw life, not with chaos, but with style. Fisher stepped into the Old West dressed sharper than most city gentlemen, his bright vests and polished boots announcing his presence long before his pistols ever did. But beneath that elegance lived a fighter of rare discipline, a man who carved order out of the very outlaw gangs he once ran with. He walked the borderlands like he owned every mile, enforcing his own brand of justice, swift, clean, and unquestioned. Those who underestimated him learned quickly that behind the charm was a deadly steadiness, a marksman whose hands never trembled. And yet, even a man who commanded the wild soon found himself facing a danger he couldn't predict, a threat rising from the one place he never expected, inside his own circle. Sam Bass. Sam Bass didn't chase danger. He chased opportunity, and danger simply kept pace with him. Before he became one of the West's most notorious outlaws, Bass was just a restless drifter with a talent for reading people and an instinct for finding cracks in any system. But once he stepped into the world of train robberies, he discovered a stage large enough for his daring. Calm, clever, and unexpectedly polite during his holdups, Bass earned a reputation as the outlaw who smiled while emptying strongboxes. His gang's legendary haul, the largest Union Pacific robbery of its time, turned him into a frontier sensation, hunted by rangers, admired by those who saw him as a folk hero, but fame is a double-edged trail. And somewhere along that trail, a traitor had already begun tightening the trap that would bring Bass's luck to its final test. Cole Younger. Cole Younger didn't begin as an outlaw. He became one after the world he knew was shattered. Raised with honor, shaped by war and driven by loyalty, he carried scars deeper than any bullet hole. When the Civil War ended, the peace that followed never reached him. Instead, he drifted into the turbulent shadows of Reconstruction-era Missouri, where every choice seemed to demand a gun. Calm, disciplined, and fiercely protective of those he called brothers, Younger became the backbone of the James Younger gang. While others chased glory, he planned, calculated, and kept the chaos from swallowing them whole. His courage was steady, his leadership unwavering, even when their crimes grew bolder, their enemies closer. But the Northfield raid would place him on a collision course with fate, and someone in that quiet Minnesota town was ready long before the gang ever arrived. Jesse James. Before Jesse James became a legend, he was simply a young man shaped by war, loss, and a world that refused to let him return to peace. But the moment he picked up a gun after the Civil War, something changed. He realized the frontier rewarded those bold enough to seize their own destiny. With a calm voice and a fearless stare, James led raids that blurred the line between rebellion and banditry. Banks, trains, and lawmen all learned the same hard truth. Jesse didn't strike for chaos, he struck with purpose. To his supporters, he was a folk hero. To his enemies, a ghost who vanished before the dust settled. And through it all, he remained one step ahead, relying on instinct, sharper than any bullet. Yet deep in the shadows of his growing fame, a familiar face was preparing a betrayal that would shock the entire West. Frank James. Long before his name echoed through dusty saloons and wanted posters, Frank James was a scholar at heart, a man who loved books as much as the saddle. But the Civil War reshaped him, hardening his calm intellect into something sharper, quieter, far more dangerous. Unlike his fiery younger brother Jesse, Frank moved with deliberate calculation. He studied every route, every guard, every escape before a single shot was fired. As the brains behind the James Younger gang, he turned reckless ambition into organized precision. Frank didn't boast, didn't rush, didn't flinch. He struck only when the odds favored him. And when he fired to end things swiftly. But even the sharpest strategist can't predict every twist of fate. And a single misjudgment was already forming, ready to pull Frank James into the darkest chapter of his life. Pearl Hart. Pearl Hart didn't enter the Old West as a gunslinger. She forced her way into its legend by refusing to live the life the world expected of her born, far from the frontier. She carried a restless fire that city walls couldn't contain. When hardship backed her into a corner, Pearl didn't crumble. She reinvented herself drifter, performer, survivor, and finally, one of the boldest bandits the West had ever seen. With sharp wit and fearless resolve, she and her partner held up an Arizona stagecoach in a robbery so daring it stunned lawmen and inspired frontier newspapers to crown her the Bandit Queen. She wasn't the fastest shot, nor the strongest, but she had nerve, charm, and a stubborn streak that made her unforgettable. Yet behind her defiance lay a twist fate was preparing. A turn that would end her outlaw road far sooner than she ever imagined. Buckskin Frank Leslie walked into the Old West looking like he'd stepped out of a dime novel. Buckskin jacket, polished boots, and eyes that warned you he'd been through more than he ever said aloud. He wasn't a drifter chasing trouble. He was a man who carried skill like a second heartbeat. Scout, sharpshooter, bartender, gambler. Leslie slipped between roles with the ease of someone who knew he could survive any room he entered. What made him dangerous wasn't noise or bravado, it was his precision. When Frank drew, it was quick, clean, and final. Tombstone learned that lesson fast. Lovers admired him, rivals feared him, and anyone who misjudged him rarely got a second chance. But along the edges of Frank's polished charm waited a reckoning, one born from jealousy, betrayal, and a single moment that would change the arc of his legend forever. Long-haired Jim Courtright. Long-haired Jim Courtright didn't build his reputation through chaos. He built it through control. Tall, sharp-featured, and always impeccably dressed, he carried himself with the grim authority of a man who believed every town needed order, his order. As a lawman, he enforced peace with a trigger finger quicker than most outlaws. As a gun for hire, he sold protection that looked suspiciously like extortion. Folks learned fast. Where Courtright walked, fear followed. He didn't shout, didn't bluster. He simply appeared in a doorway, brushing back that long hair of his, and men suddenly remembered unfinished errands far from the confrontation brewing. But beneath that icy composure burned a pride that could be baited. And one man in Fort Worth knew exactly how to strike that nerve. Soon, Courtright would face a showdown unlike any he had ever imagined, and it would end his legend in a single, devastating heartbeat. Curly Bill Brocious. Curly Bill Brocious didn't drift into frontier history. He exploded into it, laughing, drinking, and raising havoc with a confidence that made even hardened cowboys step aside. He wasn't the silent, brooding type. He was the kind of outlaw who filled every saloon with noise and every sheriff with dread. Behind that booming laugh, though, was a marksman with deadly instincts and a temper that turned wild moments into deadly encounters. As leader of the Cowboys, Curly Bill ruled the Arizona Territory with swagger and violence, challenging lawmen, raiding towns, and living like every sunrise was borrowed time. His unpredictability made him dangerous. His fearlessness made him legendary. But somewhere between the revelry and the outlaw glory, a single deadly path was closing in. One that would lead him face to face with a man determined to end his reign forever. Ben Kinney, the killer of Coconino. Before most folks even knew his name, Ben Kinney had already earned a reputation that spread through the Arizona Territory like wildfire. Whispered, never spoken aloud. He wasn't the flashy type, nor the wandering drifter looking for trouble. Kinney was something far more unsettling. A hunter who understood people the way a tracker understands footprints. Cold, methodical, and eerily patient, he earned the chilling title, the Killer of Coconino. Long before anyone could prove why, Kinney rarely raised his voice, rarely showed anger. Instead, he watched, waited, and struck only when his moment was perfect. His accuracy with a rifle was legendary, and his ability to vanish into the rugged Arizona canyons made lawmen wonder whether he was man or myth. But even a predator eventually draws the attention of something just as dangerous, and someone had already begun closing in on Ben Kinney's shadow, step by silent step. Jack Slade. Jack Slade's name was carved into the West, not through subtlety, but through sheer terror. A railroad enforcer turned notorious gunslinger, Slade had a presence that made townsfolk pause and lawmen rethink. Known for his explosive temper and unmatched skill with a six-shooter, he didn't just handle disputes, he annihilated them, leaving cautionary tales in every saloon and along every dusty trail he passed. Slade's reputation wasn't built on luck. It was earned through daring escapes, deadly duels, and a ferocity that even hardened outlaws respected and feared. Yet beneath the rough exterior was a man driven by a restless hunger, always chasing the next score, the next showdown, the next name in the papers. But the West has a way of balancing legend with fate, and Jack Slade's next confrontation would test whether even the deadliest gunman could outrun destiny itself. Fred Waite wasn't born into legend. He was forged in it. A quiet, steady presence among the Wild Bunch, he moved with the precision of a man who understood every risk before he took a step. While others chased notoriety, Waite measured every plan, every escape route, and every mark with cold calculation. He wasn't reckless. He was inevitable. As a trusted member of the gang, he participated in daring train and bank robberies, his name whispered among outlaws and lawmen alike. But Waite's skill wasn't just in the gun. It was in patience, timing, and knowing exactly when to vanish into the shadows before anyone could strike. Yet even the most careful man can be trapped by forces beyond his control. Ahead loomed a betrayal, a twist of fate that would challenge everything Fred Waite thought he could survive. Jim Levy. Jim Levy wasn't the kind of man who demanded attention. The West took notice anyway. A drifter with a quick draw and an even quicker mind, Levy carved his path with calculated precision, leaving townsfolk both awed and terrified. Unlike brash outlaws, he worked quietly, choosing when and where to strike, making every move count. His reputation grew not from reckless violence, but from the cold efficiency with which he handled trouble. Lawmen learned to give him space. Gamblers learned to watch their pockets. And rival gunslingers learned that underestimating Levy was a deadly mistake. But the frontier has a way of testing even the sharpest, calmest men. On the horizon, a confrontation was brewing, one that would push Jim Levy to the edge and challenge the very legend he had built, Black Bart. In the dusty canyons of California, a figure in fine clothes and a poetic tongue became an enigma, Black Bart. Unlike most gunslingers who thrived on chaos, he relied on wit, disguise, and a calm precision that left both victims and lawmen perplexed. Stagecoach robberies were his craft, executed with meticulous planning and almost no violence, leaving behind only a calling card, often a verse, that teased the authorities. Bart's cleverness made him legendary. He disappeared into the hills as easily as a shadow, baffling every posse sent to catch him. People spoke of him in whispers, half in admiration, half in fear, unsure if he was man or myth. But even the cleverest outlaw has a reckoning waiting, and Black Bart's next misstep was already being written by the hands of fate, promising a twist no one could foresee. Jim Younger. Jim Younger's life was a collision of loyalty, skill, and inevitability. Born into a family already steeped in frontier conflict, he learned early that survival demanded both courage and cunning. As a member of the James Younger gang, Jim became known for his calm demeanor in the most violent situations. A man who could plan a robbery with the precision of a clockmaker and draw his gun faster than most could blink. Unlike some of his more flamboyant companions, Jim relied on discipline over daring, strategy over chaos. Each heist, each escape added to the legend, making him both feared and respected across Missouri and the Midwest. Yet even the sharpest minds can be cornered. The trap that awaited Jim Younger was not a matter of chance. It was a reckoning the West had long prepared, and it would test every skill he had ever honed. Bob Dalton. Bob Dalton's story is one of ambition, brotherhood, and fatal daring. As the eldest of the infamous Dalton gang, he led his siblings into a life of robberies that would etch their names into the annals of the American Old West. Known for his fearless leadership and icy composure under fire, Bob orchestrated bank and train heists with a precision that inspired awe and terror. But ambition has a cost. The gang's boldest move, an attempted simultaneous bank robbery in Coffeyville, Kansas, proved to be their undoing. Outnumbered and outgunned, Bob and his brothers faced a violent end, their lives cut short in a hail of bullets, leaving only their legend behind. No one survived to tell the story of their final moments. Only the echo of gunfire and the memory of men who dared to challenge the West itself. The Old West may be long gone, but the echoes of these gunslingers still cling to the dust, the legends, and the stories we tell today. Their lives were short, violent, unforgettable, and every shot they fired carved a deeper mark into American history. These weren't just men with guns. They were symbols of a world balanced on courage, fear, honor, and survival. If you enjoyed this journey through the deadliest figures of the frontier, make sure to like, subscribe, and share this video with someone who loves Old West history. And if you want more stories carved from the shadows of the past, drop a comment and tell me which legend you want explored next. Until then, ride safe and keep your eyes on the horizon. The next tale is already gathering dust.